Thursday mornings, I set aside time to talk to one of my best friends. And if you follow me, you probably know about Ed Tilton, who hopefully is going to be joining me here. But I wanted to talk about this idea of an epidemic of loneliness. And hey, fellas, Matt, Kenny, good to see you guys. But yeah, we hear a lot about this epidemic of loneliness, especially associated with men. And, you know, this time that I set aside on Thursday mornings to have this conversation with my friend, I do that intentionally to deepen the connection with him, because I need other guys. And there's another guy who I do this with who might hop on here, who knows. Mike Joseph is his name. We met on Instagram, and he and I talk every Monday at 11. And but the real point I wanted to get to about this epidemic of loneliness that we hear about all the time is what we don't hear about, which is the reason that we have an epidemic of loneliness. It's not about feminism when it comes to men. It's not about Me Too. It's not about anything like that. It's because we don't nurture connection in our society. We make connection difficult. We undermine intimacy. And in my view, the main way that we do that is discouraging people from talking about their emotional experience. Because the way that we really achieve intimacy with somebody else is by talking about what's going on with us inside. So, you know, these guys on this call right now are both guys who, if I was going through something really, really difficult, you know, with a family member or my son or anybody, my wife, I could talk to them and I could tell them how I feel about it without them getting weird, without them trying to fix me, without them having a problem with me recognizing that I have emotions. And generally, as guys, what we're trained to do from the time we're little boys is to pretend that we don't have feelings. We're trained to pretend that we don't have feelings. And it amounts to a fracture in ourselves. We become disconnected from ourselves. And for me, you know, as a guy who's been sober a long time, I can tell you whether or not I was genetically predisposed, whether or not I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of alcohol, which I did. The reason I drank the way I did is because I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. And in fact, I felt like there was something wrong with me because I felt anything at all. Because, you know, that's what we're trained to do. Pretend that we don't have emotions. So, you know, one of the ways that we undermine this is think about anytime you're watching TV and you see somebody shed a tear, or any time in your life you see someone shed a tear, they apologize. Almost immediately, they try to stop themselves, and it's because they don't want to upset the other person, which, you know, that's called codependency, by the way. So that's one of the real clear expressions of this phenomenon that I'm talking about. But there are times in my life when the people who are close to me who aren't in some kind of program of recovery or something, when I talk to them about how I'm feeling, they kind of shut down. And so I don't do it. I stick with the people like the guys who are on this live right now, who can tolerate that because they're okay with themselves. But anyway, it's just something I thought I would chat about a little bit on here. Pay attention. Pay attention to the things you see and you hear in your life and how they relate to your emotional experience, whether or not they encourage you to be emotional at all, or which they won't. They don't. And this is it's especially prevalent with men, but it's not just men, it's everyone. There is culturally an acceptable range of emotions for people to express. And it's different for men and women. It's a larger range of emotions that are acceptable for a woman to express, and a more narrow range for men. Like we're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to show that. But sadness is another story. And there's a low tolerance for expressions of happiness a lot of times. And I think this is one of the reasons, by the way, that as men, we really appreciate sports. Because it gives us a way to have a full range of an emotional experience witnessing our team or taking part in a sporting event. Love you too, Kenny. Because when the guy's super sad because they just lost Game 7 of the World Series, he shows it. And when he's super excited because he just won the Super Bowl, he shows it. And, it's sort of this all through the game. I think especially we see it with football, is this unfettered emotional experience where, guys can sit in their living rooms with their friends or whatever and show frustration and, get mad and be joyful and all those things without worrying about how other people perceive it. So I guess just one other point I want to make is that, talking about intimacy, we're so averse to it as a society that we have conflated the word with sexual behavior. Emotions are so taboo that we can't even talk about the state that acknowledging our emotional experience gives us, which is intimacy. That's how we achieve intimacy with other people, is by sharing our emotional experience with them. Think about it. One of the things in my adult life that I've witnessed is that invariably when there's a funeral in my, somebody dies in my family, we go through the whole funeral experience. It brings all the survivors closer because we're having that deep experience in community. We're connecting with each other. And, when we go through hard things with the people close to us, we get closer to them. And so, just this environment that we have in our society where we are discouraged from talking about how we feel. We're discouraged, there are plenty of guys on this app who will flat out tell me I'm gay or a woman because I'm talking about my feelings. Think about that. Emotions don't have a gender. We just pretend that they do. It infuriates me. And you know why it bothers me? Because I grew up around a lot of guys who were like me. They didn't know how to deal with their emotional experience. And when they went through some pretty normal setbacks in life for emerging adult males, they didn't know what to do with that. And they didn't have men who modeled healthy intimacy for them. They didn't have men who mentored healthy connection for them, who showed them how to do that. And what they ended up doing was taking their own lives because they thought there was something wrong with them for being as sad as they were. Or whatever, the emotional state that they were in. Obviously it was desperation. But they didn't have anybody who they felt like they could talk to about it. So I don't give a shit if you think I'm gay or a woman or whatever. I'm going to talk about this stuff because if there's anything I can do to make sure one person doesn't take his own life, then I'm going to do that. And the other part of it is the people who have issues with that, I just don't care, because after spending nearly 3 decades working on this part of myself, my life's a hell of a lot better than it was before, and I like this way. It feels better to live this way, in connection with myself instead of alienated from myself. So I'm trying to get a good angle here where you can see me. The sun's really weird. But my friend Ed texted me to tell me he's not going to be able to jump on. I appreciate you guys being here. Or if you're watching it later, I'll post it on my profile. Forgive the noise of the traffic behind me. If you want to, learn more about me, the best way right now is I have a Substack where I write about a lot of things related to this topic. I write about living in long-term sobriety and achieving long-term sobriety, what that experience was like for me. I write about the challenges of being a man who is connected to himself, who is going through life trying to deal with his family of origin issues and his codependency issues, and who's trying to help other people do that, especially other men. So if there are links in my bio, I have a Substack publication called The Manifest. Lately, I've written specifically about my own sobriety because this is my anniversary month. I celebrated 28 years earlier this month. And it just felt like a good time for me to share about that part of me. So if you want to check out what I'm doing there, that would be awesome. I'm putting a lot of effort into nurturing the community over there, and I'd love to have you be a part of it. Or if nothing else, just read my work. Professionally, I've worked in the substance abuse treatment industry for a really long time. Right now, in that capacity, I coach individuals early on in recovery. I coach families who are trying to help their loved ones achieve recovery. And I coach mostly guys who have been in recovery for a while, or, and they're dealing with second stage recovery issues like challenges in relationships. And ultimately, what it always boils down to is the relationship with self. And if you don't know how you feel because you've been trained to disconnect from that part of yourself, how the hell can you even know who you are?